you know, you are standing in your hallway and you're just staring down at the junk drawer.
Oh, yeah. We all have that one drawer.
Right. You know the exact one. Or maybe, I mean, maybe for you listening, it's that specific chair in your bedroom.
Mm.
The one that is slowly, over the course of a week, transformed into this precarious mountain of laundry.
The infamous laundry chair. Yeah.
Exactly. And you look at this drawer or this chair, and you know you need to deal with it. Objectively, it's, what, a 5-minute task?
Basically.
But instead of just reaching out and, I don't know, sorting the batteries from the tangled cords, you feel this sudden, overwhelming sense of paralysis.
Mm.
It feels like a physical weight pressing down on your chest, and you freeze.
Yeah, it's a very visceral reaction. I mean, you're looking at a physical manifestation of postponed decision.
Postponed decisions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. And we tend to brush that freeze response off as mere procrastination or like a lack of discipline. But the physiological cascade happening in your body in that exact moment is incredibly complex. You are experiencing a real-time neurological event.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that neurological event is exactly our mission for this deep dive today.
Absolutely.
We are exploring the profound, surprising, and frankly vital psychological link between our physical environments and our mental well-being. We're drawing from this fascinating document titled 3 Tidy Home, tidymind.pdf.
And it's such a rich source, too.
It really is. It's this blend of insights from professional organizers, the TGCO community, clinical studies, including this major one from the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, and deeply personal anecdotes from mental health journalists.
Right.
And the goal here is to understand that dealing with that laundry chair isn't about aesthetics. It's not about having a pretty house. It's about mental survival.
Yeah, it's about understanding the mechanics of how our brains process our surroundings. My aim today is to dissect the why behind this paralysis.
Because, you know, when you understand the underlying mechanisms of why a messy room alters your brain chemistry, the methodology of what to do about it completely shifts. It goes from being a punishing chore to, well, an act of self-preservation.
I love that, self-preservation. But the source material, it forces us to start by redefining what we're actually looking at. Before we can fix the clutter, we have to define it.
Yes, the definitions matter.
And the parameters they use are really interesting. They define clutter not just as having a lot of stuff, but fundamentally as an untidy, chaotic collection of things that forces you to move items just to accomplish a simple chore.
That operational definition completely shifts the paradigm. I mean, it centers the concept of friction.
Friction, right?
Think about like a passionate collector. They might have thousands of items in a room, but those items are meticulously cataloged and displayed.
Right, they know where everything is. Exactly. That isn't necessarily clutter. Clutter is the physical friction that impedes your daily life. If you have to move a stack of unopened mail, 3 empty coffee cups, and a broken umbrella just to find the space to wipe down your kitchen counter, you are experiencing high-friction living.
Wait, I have to push back on this a little bit because I think a lot of people listening might fall back on the old messy desk, genius mind trope.
Oh, sure, the Einstein desk.
Right. Isn't a bit of mess sometimes a sign of a creative mind? Why is the assumption in the text that all of this untidiness is inherently damaging?
Well, it's a fair question, and the distinction really lies in whether the environment is serving the individual or hindering them.
Okay.
The messy genius might have a desk covered in papers, but if they know exactly where everything is and it facilitates their workflow, the friction is low.
Oh, got it.
The source material is specifically addressing the type of clutter that acts as visual noise. This is the kind of mess where each item potentially triggers an unhelpful, stressful alarm bell in your head.
Visual noise. I read that phrase in the text, and it really stuck with me. But how does an inanimate object, like, say, an old takeaway menu, trigger an alarm bell?
To understand that, we really have to look at that 2009 study published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin that the author cites.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So the researchers analyzed the specific language women use to describe their homes, and they found a measurable difference in the biology of the women who used words associated with cluttered versus those who viewed their homes as restful or restorative.
Biology, like actual physical differences.
Yes. The women living in what they perceived as cluttered environments had demonstrably higher levels of cortisol.
Wow. I mean, I always assumed clutter just made people grumpy or irritable, just a mood thing.
Right, but the study points to something happening deep beneath the surface.
What is cortisol actually doing to the body in this scenario?
So, cortisol is our primary stress hormone. It's responsible for the fight or flight response. Evolutionarily, it's designed to save your life in short, intense bursts, like if you need the sudden energy to sprint away from a predator.
Okay, that makes sense.
It floods your system, heightens your alertness, and temporarily shuts down non-essential functions like digestion. But our ancient brains are not equipped to constantly process thousands of useless static visual stimuli in our modern homes.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. When your brain scans an old piece of mail, an unused gadget, or a pile of clothes, it is constantly trying to categorize them and decide if they require action.
Having a cluttered room is like trying to work on a computer with 50 different browser tabs open.
Yes, perfect analogy.
And like 3 of them are playing different songs. You might only be looking at one tab, but the computer is completely drained just trying to render all that background data.
That takes the analogy a step further in a really useful way. Just like a computer's RAM, your brain's working memory has a hard limit. When those 50 visual tabs are open in your physical environment, it drains your internal battery. The cascading health effects of this chronically elevated cortisol are explicitly listed in the source. We're talking anxiety, headaches, fatigue, insomnia, memory lapses, concentration problems, and depression.
That is a terrifying list.
It is. Your body never enters the necessary rest and digest phase because it is perpetually on high alert, scanning the friction in the room.
If that internal battery is constantly drained just by sitting on the sofa, what happens when you actually need to use it for something important?
You don't have it.
The fatigue makes so much sense now. You haven't done anything physically demanding, but you're exhausted because your brain has been silencing tiny alarm bells all day.
And that physiological exhaustion leads directly into the emotional toll. If this stress response is constantly running in the background, it eventually paralyzes us. The source brings in the perspective of Fiona Thomas, a mental health journalist, who notes that a universal problem for people struggling with depression and anxiety is the sheer inability to deal with everyday tasks.
Yeah, she talks about things that objectively take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Paying an overdue utility bill, mailing a letter, renewing a passport.
Very basic things.
I read her accounts of this, and they are incredibly raw. She talked about wearing dirty clothes for days because she couldn't bear to make a dent in a month's worth of laundry.
Yeah.
She was shoving piles of unwanted books and mismatched bikinis under her bed. At one point, she was sneaking under the duvet at 2 in the afternoon because the shame of the mess in her home was just too suffocating.
The shame is the critical engine of that cycle. The clutter causes the physiological stress, that cortisol spike we discussed, which drains the executive function required to clean the clutter.
And then the mess gets worse.
Exactly. That leads to more clutter, which triggers deep shame, which further deepens the depression. It becomes a self-reinforcing loop. The source highlights a deeply poignant story about a woman named Elizabeth that illustrates how impenetrable this loop can feel.
Elizabeth's story is really striking. She's a 26-year-old department manager who had been off work for 6 months due to a severe diagnosis of depression and anxiety.
A really tough situation.
She was struggling with the absolute basics of survival: showering, cleaning the kitchen, vacuuming. And she writes about a specific day when her mother came over and simply offered to help clean her house.
And how does she react to that offer of help?
She was highly offended. She wrote, "Had it really got that bad? It made her realize how debilitated she was by her illness, and it made her feel utterly useless."
I want to pause on that defensive reaction. Why does a genuine offer of help trigger offense?
Right, because her mom was just being nice.
Exactly. It's because the mess has stopped being just a collection of objects and has become intimately tied to her identity. The breakthrough Elizabeth came to in the text was recognizing that her untidiness was fundamentally linked to her self-worth.
Wow.
She literally wrote that she didn't see herself as deserving of a clean and well-ordered home.
You know, I've actually felt that defensive spike before when someone points out a mess I've been ignoring. It's like the mess is validating the internal depression.
Yes, exactly that.
If your environment is a mirror and you are struggling with your self-worth, cleaning that mirror almost feels like a lie.
What's fascinating here is how the physical space becomes an undeniable three-dimensional reflection of our internal self-esteem. When Elizabeth looked at her dirty carpets, she wasn't just seeing dust. She was seeing a physical manifestation of her perceived lack of worth. If you subconsciously believe you do not deserve comfort, peace, or a restorative environment, you will self-sabotage any attempt to create one.
That is so heavy.
You tolerate the visual noise because it perfectly matches your internal noise.
That concept that objects hold the weight of our internal noise brings us to the story from Mary Meadows, a life coach mentioned in the text. She incorporates decluttering into her coaching practice.
A brilliant approach, really.
And she had a client whose absolute nemesis was a basket of holy socks.
The semiotics of everyday objects. I mean, a basket of unsorted socks is purely materially just cotton and synthetic fibers.
Right.
But to this specific client, it had morphed into a daily, tangible affirmation of a core fear.
Every single morning, this client would look inside that basket, see the socks needing sorting, and the immediate thought that fired in her brain was, I am a bad mother.
Yeah.
Every day, it was the first thought in her head, triggered by laundry.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it demystifies exactly why we avoid cleaning. We don't avoid the chore because we are inherently lazy or lack character.
Right, it's not laziness.
We avoid it because confronting the mess means confronting our perceived personal failures. To sit down and sort those socks is to intentionally engage with the very object that makes her feel like a failure as a parent.
Oh, that's brutal.
Avoiding the socks is a protective mechanism to avoid the negative emotion. But the tragedy is that the basket remains in the room, silently radiating that negative message all day long.
Wow.
Through coaching, she was able to alter her perspective, unclutter the basket, and the coach noted it brought her a new sense of confidence and resilience.
What is your version of the sock basket? I want you listening right now to really think about that.
Everyone has one.
What's the one chore or the one pile of stuff in your home that makes you feel a completely disproportionate amount of guilt when you look at it?
It's a great question.
If we're trapped in this shame cycle, staring at our own personal sock baskets, how do we get out? I mean, our instinct is usually to hide it from everyone else.
We hide it because exposing the mess feels identical to exposing our deepest internal flaws. The text makes a very strong case for the necessity of outside intervention, but it acknowledges the profound fear and embarrassment associated with asking for that help.
To illustrate that fear, the author shares the story of Sarah. Sarah is living a life so many people can relate to in today's hyper-hustle culture.
Absolutely.
She and her husband both work for a large, intense law firm in the city of London. They're leaving the house at 6 a.m. and not getting back until 9 p.m.
High pressure, long hours, and significant demands on their executive function. They loved their jobs, but the pressure was immense.
Insane pressure.
And what happened was that Sarah began to actively dread the weekends. The weekends are supposed to be restorative, right? The time to drop your cortisol levels. But for Sarah, they became a source of severe anxiety because that's when she was forced to open her kitchen cupboards and wardrobes. The accumulation of stuff was insurmountable, and she simply couldn't psych herself up to tackle it.
The toll it took was heavy, affecting her relationship with her husband and her own mental health.
Mhm.
But the most damaging part of the story, to me, was the comparison trap.
Oh, the comparison trap is lethal.
She was constantly comparing herself unfavorably to her work colleagues. They were all in similar situations, working the exact same crazy hours. But to Sarah, her colleagues just seemed to effortlessly get on with it and maintain perfect lives.
This is a classic cognitive distortion fueled by modern social dynamics. She is comparing her own behind-the-scenes, chaotic, private reality with the highly curated public personas of her colleagues.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She's looking at her colleagues in their sharp, tailored suits at the law firm, functioning flawlessly in a professional public setting. And she's assuming that their private kitchen cupboards at home are just as perfectly organized.
Which is almost certainly false.
Right. We never see the hidden messes in someone else's private life. We only ever see our own unwatered grass.
Which is why the isolation of clutter is so potent. You become convinced you are the only one failing at basic adulthood.
Yeah.
Sarah eventually cleared that massive first hurdle. She recognized she was drowning and asked for help by calling the author of the text. And the anatomy of that intervention is incredibly revealing about how to break the paralysis.
You would think an intervention like this would be a somber, clinical, highly disciplined affair.
Like a military operation.
Exactly. But when the author arrived to help Sarah, they came up with a plan, targeted the urgent areas, and then they just had fun.
Yeah, they really did.
They played Prince, they sang, they danced, they cried, they hugged. And Sarah was amazed because she could physically feel the worry dissipating. The weight was lifted.
The mechanism at play here is fascinating. Why does handing a problem over to a dispassionate third party work so effectively?
Why is
It's because it short-circuits the emotional friction of decision-making. When Sarah looks at a random item in her cupboard, she doesn't just see the object. Her brain is flooded with the guilt of buying it, the shame of not using it, the anxiety of where to store it.
all that noise?
But when the professional organizer looks at it, they just see a ceramic mug. The dispassionate helper acts as a buffer against your own neurological noise.
They absorb the cortisol spike for you.
Exactly. The source makes a vital point about societal expectations regarding this dynamic. We are heavily conditioned to view asking for domestic help as a sign of weakness.
Oh, for sure. Like, we should be able to do it all.
There is this rugged individualism applied to household chores. We feel we should be able to do it all ourselves. But the text argues that while we feel we must fend for ourselves to prove our worth, we are actually much more resilient when we work as a team.
I love the quote the author includes from their Grandma Lottie to summarize this entire comparison trap. The grass isn't greener on the other side, it's greener where you water it.
Sarah was looking at her colleagues' metaphorical lawns, assuming they were naturally lush and green, but we only have control over our own watering.
Right.
The realization is that you have to embrace the lawn you have, water it consistently, and not be paralyzed by the fear of asking someone to hold the hose when you are tired.
So we've got the emotional buffer, we've stopped comparing our lawns to the people in the sharp suits at work. What is the actual mechanism for getting our grass green?
The nuts and bolts of it.
Right. How do we navigate the methodology? Because the text is very clear that you don't need to hire a reality TV intervention team to start. You can do this yourself if you fundamentally change your approach to the tasks.
The Getting Started section of the document outlines a very pragmatic, gradual methodology. It emphasizes analyzing the problem first, then creating a room-by-room to-do list,
Break it down.
and setting aside a very strict, manageable amount of time, just 30 minutes to an hour a day. The entire architecture of the advice is built around starting small, micro-actions.
I want to look closely at why microactions are so effective. Because Fiona Thomas, the journalist who struggled to mail a letter, champions the soothing effect of these tiny steps. She talks about how putting just one single item back in its rightful home is representative of managing the massive mental burden she carries around.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of clinical psychology, we are talking about rebuilding self-efficacy from the ground up.
Okay, self-efficacy.
When a person is suffering from depression or severe anxiety, the macro problems in their life, financial debt, systemic career stress, complex relationship issues, they feel entirely unsolvable.
Yeah, too big to tackle.
They certainly cannot be resolved in a single Tuesday afternoon. But microactions provide a vital psychological counterweight. Psychologists note that the seemingly trivial act of clearing a single surface gives us a profound sense of mastery, action, and pleasure.
Mastery, action, and pleasure.
This triad is the exact antidote to the learned helplessness and hopelessness that characterizes depression.
There is a statistic in the text regarding these tiny steps that completely caught me off guard. Studies have found that people who do simple tasks, such as making their bed each morning, are 19% more likely to get a good night's sleep.
That 19% is a phenomenal data point because it highlights the cyclical biochemical nature of mental health.
19% just from pulling up a blanket.
Yeah. Depression and anxiety are major disruptors of sleep architecture. Insomnia then strips away your emotional regulation, making the anxiety substantially more difficult to manage the next day. It's a devastating downward spiral.
So by performing a microaction, just taking 2 minutes to pull the sheets up and arrange the pillows, you are inserting a physical circuit breaker into that downward spiral.
Precisely. You are setting the tone for the day with an act of mastery, and you are creating a visual sanctuary. When your primitive brain enters that room at night, the visual cue of a made bed signals safety and order, statistically improving your chances of entering restorative sleep phases. You equip your brain to handle tomorrow's anxiety better, all triggered by a 2-minute physical chore. It is a positive feedback loop.
So what does this all mean for the way we actually live our lives? It means we have to radically shift our expectations of what clean looks like.
Absolutely.
This isn't a weekend makeover montage where everything is magically fixed before the commercial break. The text practically begs the reader to celebrate the little wins. The TGCO top tip in the text says, don't be disheartened if it takes longer than you expected. Remember that even one tick is better than none.
Self-compassion is the non-negotiable foundation of this entire process. If feeling sluggish, tearful, and unable to get out of bed is your daily baseline, the simple act of reaching for a duster might require days of self-motivation. If you finally muster the energy to dust one shelf, and then immediately berate yourself for not cleaning the entire house, you are punishing the exact behavior you want to encourage.
Wow, that's a great point.
The goal is to reprogram your brain to associate decluttering with pleasure and relief rather than punishment and inadequacy.
Getting rid of the obvious trash, the old receipts, the broken umbrellas is one thing, but I find the absolute hardest things to deal with aren't the junk, but the good stuff.
The things you actually like.
Right, the things I am intentionally keeping for a reason. Which brings us to a really challenging concept in the source material, the save for best fallacy.
This is a behavioral pattern that is incredibly common and quite insidious when you look at the psychology behind it.
It really is.
The author explores how we compulsively save certain items: designer handbags, expensive shoes, fine champagne flutes, a posh dress, fancy underwear for best.
I am guilty of this right now. I have a really expensive jacket hanging in the back of my closet that I bought 2 years ago.
Still with the tags on.
The tags are still on it. I keep telling myself I'm waiting for the perfect event to wear it to. But that mythical, perfectly orchestrated future event somehow never arrives.
It rarely does.
The author asks a brilliant, cutting question in the text. How do you know when best actually is?
When the author asks their clients what saving for best actually means in practice, the answers invariably revolve around the item's financial cost. This reveals a very specific consumer mindset.
Okay, unpack that for me.
We go shopping, and we get a massive dopamine hit from the experience. The styling of the store, the attentive service, the act of handing over the money, carrying the luxurious branded bag. The purchase makes us feel special.
The retail therapy high.
But then we bring the item home and we lock it in a wardrobe. Out of sight, out of mind.
We buy the item to feel special, but then we deny ourselves the actual experience of using it. Why do we do that? It's like buying a beautiful, high-performance sports car and only allowing yourself to sit in it while it's parked in the dark garage.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You're paying for the potential of joy, but never the realization of it.
We do it because of loss aversion and the fear of degradation.
Fear of degradation.
The moment you wear the jacket, you risk spilling coffee on it. The moment you use the champagne flute, you risk shattering it. The anticipation of the perfect moment feels safer than the reality of using the object in a messy, unpredictable world.
That makes so much sense. We want to keep it perfect.
But psychologically, the damage of this mindset is profound. By saving things for an undefined best day, we are subtly but constantly signaling to ourselves that our current everyday life isn't special or worthy enough.
Ouch.
We are perpetually deferring our joy. We are telling our subconscious today is just a regular, boring Tuesday. I'm not currently living a life that deserves the good champagne flutes.
Hearing you say that we defer our joy makes me realize I'm waiting for a version of my life that doesn't exist yet, at the expense of the life I'm actually living. It ties right back to Elizabeth and her messy room. It's all about the deserving self. We don't feel worthy of our own nice things. The text shares a really beautiful perspective from a client named Kate, who confronted this exact issue.
Kate's realization captures the emotional liberation of getting past this fallacy. She went through her clutter and described the process as feeling like she was shopping in a bargain basement department store located within her own home. She had buried her joy under piles of friction.
She found her own amazing pieces hidden away. And by discarding the friction, the visual noise, and only keeping what was beautiful and useful, she said she felt calm and grateful. Her final sentence in that anecdote is the key. It's freed my mind to be creative again.
When you aren't expending background cognitive energy suppressing the guilt of unused items or mourning the money spent on things you never wear, that mental RAM is finally freed up.
Right.
The advice from the text is uncompromising. If an item doesn't make you smile, or if it still has tags on it after years, discard it or use it immediately. Every day you wake up should be your best day.
We have to bring these high-level philosophies, the deserving self, the visual noise, deferring joy down to earth. How do we build a system that supports this new mindset?
Systems are crucial.
Because the text provides a very practical toolkit, 10 ways to tidy and calm you. But I don't want to just list them off. I want to look closely at the mechanisms behind a few of the most impactful ones and how they handle the inevitable setbacks we all face.
Let's focus on 3 core strategies from that toolkit that deeply affect our cognitive load. The first one is the directive to plan the week ahead every Sunday.
Sunday planning. Okay.
On the surface, it sounds like standard productivity advice, but the psychological mechanism is much deeper.
The text notes that planning reduces stress and makes you more productive because you aren't waking up worrying about what is happening tomorrow.
This relies on a psychological concept known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yes. It dictates that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed tasks. If you go to sleep with a vague sense of everything you have to do tomorrow, those uncompleted tasks are bouncing around in your working memory, disrupting your rest.
Making it hard to fall asleep.
By writing them down in a concrete plan on Sunday, you are externally offloading that data. You give your brain permission to stop tracking those items, which dramatically reduces your baseline anxiety. You don't have to use cognitive energy on Monday morning deciding what to do, you just execute the plan.
That makes total sense, offloading the RAM. A second major strategy from the toolkit that jumped out at me is the advice to get rid of completely obsolete items.
Yes, the obsolete stuff.
The specific example they use is one I think everyone is guilty of. Keeping chargers for old phones and devices you got rid of years ago. Why is it so hard to throw away a piece of plastic wire that we objectively know we will never use again?
The old charger is a perfect example of the sunk cost fallacy combined with a fear of future lack.
The fear of lack, yeah.
We keep the tangled wires because throwing them away feels like an admission of finality. We are admitting the old device is truly gone, or perhaps we fear that the moment we throw the wire away, we will miraculously need it.
And we never do.
Never. But holding on to obsolete utility just creates literal tangles in our living space. Discarding the old charger is a symbolic act of trusting yourself to handle the future without needing to hoard the past.
And a third crucial piece of the toolkit is about altering the environment of the task itself. The author advises playing relaxing music or a favorite podcast while you declutter. If you dread a task, incorporate fun into it.
We saw this in action with Sarah's intervention when they played Prince and danced. This is about dopamine bundling.
Dopamine bundling.
Yes. If the task of sorting the sock basket triggers feelings of inadequacy, you have to overwrite that emotional pathway. By pairing the dreaded physical task with a high-reward auditory stimulus like your favorite album, you are fundamentally altering the emotional state associated with the physical act. Over time, the brain begins to associate tidying with the dopamine release of the music, lowering the barrier to entry for the task.
But even with Sunday planning, ditching the old chargers and blasting Prince, we're going to fail sometimes. And that brings us to what I think is the most empathetic, crucial part of this entire deep dive. A section in the text titled, "It's Okay to Have a Wobbly Day."
None of us are immune to a wobble. Life is not a linear trajectory of improvement. It is full of unpredictable highs and lows.
Right.
The text emphasizes that shedding tears, writing down your feelings of overwhelm, or simply taking a break to eat a slice of lemon meringue pie, which is the author's personal favorite coping mechanism, is perfectly valid and necessary.
Eat the pie. I love that.
That's good advice.
The text shares a message from Jennifer, one of the author's online followers, that grounds this whole conversation. She lives in a 2-bedroom flat with 3 children.
That's a lot of potential clutter.
Let's be real, that is an environment engineered for constant chaotic clutter. But she talks about how creating a calm home is a work in progress. It is not a static state of perfection that you achieve and then defend forever. It is the continuous, messy management of life.
This raises an important question about how we view success in our personal environments. Perfectionism is the absolute enemy of consistency.
Say that again. Perfectionism is the enemy.
It really is. A wobbly day, a day where the laundry chair piles up again, doesn't mean you are regressing. It doesn't mean you failed the system or that your depression is winning. It just means you are human and you ran out of energy.
Yeah.
The TGCO community approach works precisely because there is, to quote the text directly, no unrealistic standard to try to achieve.
Don't wait for a better today, make today better.
No.
That is the ultimate parting piece of advice from the source material. If all you managed to do today was take out the bin, that is enough. Small steps lead to more steps. You have to be exceptionally kind to yourself in this process.
Because the mental load we carry in the modern world is heavy enough without our homes actively fighting against us. A cluttered life brings a barrage of stress, guilt, confusion, shame, anger, and deep self-judgment.
Exhausting.
By decluttering even a tiny area, even if you just organize the inside of your handbag today, you are creating actual space inside your own head. You are making space to let the good stuff in.
So, to bring this all together for you listening, clutter isn't just a physical mess. It is a source of visual noise that literally spikes your cortisol levels and drains your cognitive battery. We've explored the dark side of this, how the shame around our messes paralyzes us, turning everyday objects like a basket of socks into monuments of our perceived failures.
Yeah.
But we've also mapped the way out. By asking for dispassionate help to short-circuit our emotions, by committing to micro-actions like making the bed to rebuild our self-efficacy, and by refusing to defer our joy to some mythical best day, we can reclaim our mental space.
Decluttering is fundamentally an act of deep self-care. It is not a punishment for being a messy person. It is a pathway back to feeling calm, creative, and in control of your own life.
And I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to consider, building on the mechanisms we've unpacked today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the state of our physical space directly and measurably mirrors our internal mental state, as these studies strongly suggest, well, when we finally tackle that junk drawer and reorganize our homes, are we actually physically rearranging our own brain's neural pathways, one discarded old phone charger at a time? Next time you throw an unused, friction-causing item into the bin, ask yourself, what obsolete, unhelpful thought pattern did I just toss out with it?